Sunday six pack for my first pick, first overall, going with the Denver Broncos plus 5.5 at home against the New England Patriots. This line is let's break down this line. Let's break down the line. If the Broncos had Bo Nix, especially given the narratives with the Patriots and their easy schedule, I mean, I think the Broncos got really lucky this year, but I think the line would have still been Broncos minus 2-ish. I would have made it around 1.5, 2, maybe just inside of 3.
I mean, Broncos were closed 1.5 point favorites against the Bills, and the Bills are power rated ahead of the Patriots in market, and to me, I would have had them
minus 2-ish, 2.5,
2.5. Yeah,
right. Okay, so let's just go with that 2.5. Now the line is 5.5. The other way. Bo Nix is not worth a 7-point swing. Now, there are some ways I think the Broncos will miss Bo Nix in this game, in this specific matchup, and I'll get to that. But overall, just on the surface, to explain this bet, Bo Nix not worth 7-point drop off to Jarrett Stidham. Now you ask, well, why is that? Well, first of all, Bo Nix this year averaged 6.4 yards an attempt. Like, he throwing the football, he wasn't great. You know, he got better, I think, as the year progressed against zone coverage. He still made some throws against man. He still gave him positives with his legs, but he was probably an average quarterback, all things considered. Not great. Jarrett Stidham, if you look back, he has a small sample still, but he's been about a league average starter in his starts, like EPA wise, not even a backup, like a league average starter. Now, small sample, so we're not going to weight that too much, but he's a competent quarterback. And that is going to be important here, because the one thing about the Patriots, and I talked about this last week, with the Woody Marks thing, you can't run on the Patriots. And I think that's where the Broncos will miss Bo Nix. That's why, I like the 5.5 more than I like the money line in this spot, just because I could see the Patriots escaping yet again with like a close win. But this line is egregious. Stidham is in no way 7 points worth the Knicks. The Broncos defense still going to be at home. Drake May has been sloppy with the football. So Drake May, we looked at this game last week and it was like, all right, DJ Stroud just having a nightmare. He threw 4 picks. It just wasn't processing in the pocket. But if we look at what Drake May's been doing over these past couple, he's fumbled 6 times. He's taken 10 sacks. And these are against
45% pressure to sack ratio.
Exactly. And so it's like anytime you hear the dreaded sideline reporters, who have nothing to say ever, when they go down to them and they're like, oh yeah, Drake May said he's got to take better care. They said it about Stroud and May at different points of the game. What happens? A freaking turnover, just like it was like a smorgasbord of turnovers in that game, and potential turnovers for both of them. And it's like, this is not something you could just say you're going to improve. And the one thing about the Patriots that the more sample we get, that's becoming a concern, I think you alluded to this last week, Stuck, was that when you actually go back and look at the numbers for the pressure and for the yards before contact, so offensive line metrics for the Patriots, they've been worse with Will Campbell and Wilson in there. Those guys missed games near the end of the year. So those guys are back in there now. Will Campbell especially, Houston was targeting him all day, lining up Anderson. He's going to get
abused here.
Exactly. And they were lining Anderson up over him. Like, they were just – so this Bronco team, record-setting pressure. And remember, they don't rely on turnovers. They may very well get them in this game again. Now, they needed them against the Bills. That's understandable. Josh Allen is still Josh Allen. And I thought it wasn't the Broncos' finest defensive game at all. But
Bills' offensive line is also way better than the Patriots' offensive line.
Exactly. That's really the issue, because Drake May has some Allen-like tendencies. He's fearless. He can make, very pinpoint throws, very far downfield. He can scramble. Not quite as big to take up some of the punishment, I don't think, in the same way. At least as thick, but 10 sacks in 2 games against the Broncos record-setting sack defense with all these fumbles. That's not going to get it done. Now you say, okay, well, how do the Patriots respond to that? They're going against a backup quarterback, so they might come out a little bit more conservative, more close to the vest. It is Mike Vrabel, so that's another thing that could actually work in the Broncos' favor, because what is one thing we learned about Sean Payton that we've been learning about Sean Payton as a Bronco, especially over these last 2 years? This dude is not just going to run the ball for any reason. Like last year, Bo Nix, rookie quarterback. I track like pass rate over expected and all that stuff, because for projecting fantasy, I kept waiting for them to like regress to like a normal pass rate all year. They're just above expectation, positive, negative, neutral game script. Same thing this year. They go against one of the worst run defenses in the league in Buffalo, and their running backs combined for 10 carries. I think one got called back, so 11 really. I think Bidet had one that got called back. So 11 carries, we'll say, in an overtime game, to the point where you're running Knicks, you get them hurt because you're not handing the ball off to the backs. Now you don't have that option, but that's good, because the Patriots held in 2 games. They held running backs to 31 carries for 61 yards in the 2 playoff games so far. Neither team really wanted to run the ball. Houston at one point was running the ball just because CJ Stroud was puking his brains out all over the field. Like that's the only, like they were trying to abandon the run way early in the game, and then CJ Stroud just somehow happened to be worse than getting 1 yard per carry. And so they started handing the ball off to Marks a few more times. But you're not running on the Patriots. So Stidham being a competent backup, Sean Payton not being afraid to throw the football, even when he was down what? He was down 2 receivers where a third went into the medical tent and got cleared. And going against one of the worst run defenses in the league with a lead for most of the game, and handed the ball 10 times to backs. So all this is good for the Broncos. This line is egregious. They're at home. This Sean Payton knows how to scheme backup quarterbacks. I think he's something like 17-5 with backups, during his time with the Saints. Remember Bridgewater, Taysom, Winston. Like he's done it in the playoffs. He's done it in the regular season. So yeah, give me the Broncos here. I think the Patriots are a little bit slept on in the sense that I really like their run defense. I think their run defense is just amazing. It kind of reminds me of the Vrabel run defenses with Jeffrey Simmons. I like how the defense is playing, with everybody healthy now on the back end for the most part. Carlton Davis is questionable, but I still think this line is crazy, especially for the carelessness Drake May has had with the ball. And Stidham's been around, this type of environment before. He came up with the Patriots. That could work for and against him, but I just think Peyton's track record, the fact that he's not going to lean into the run too hard just because he has a backup, is going to ultimately work in the Broncos' favor, along with their pressure and the fact that they still have upside for their defense in terms of, not really relying on turnovers. So give me Denver plus 5.5.
Yeah, this would have been my first pick. Unfortunately, you were picking first this week, but this was the first bet I made this week. So yeah, I mean, I'm projecting the drop off from Nix to Stidham to be like, I mean, it's an elite quarterback. Your drop off to like not a top 5 backup is like a touchdown plus. And that's not the case here. I mean, Nix overall, his whole body of work is like an average quarterback who can be really bad at times, who can be like a bottom 5 quarterback. And Stidham, I think, is like, I would consider him an upper echelon backup. So I'm projecting this with, the wide receiver injuries. I'm projecting this like a 5-point drop off. And I think I might even be too high with that, but
yeah, that's a little aggressive there.
I know, but I'm still only then at like 3.2, 3.3 for the line. So I think this spread should be a field goal. This is also, look, by the way, over the last 50 years, home dogs in the NFL playoffs of 4+ points are 9-0 against the spread. Denver in January, this is not an easy place to play, especially in January. For what it's worth, they're 5-0 against the spread as a home dog in January all time. 2-0 in the playoffs. They beat the Pats in one of those games as a home dog in January, and they won with Tim Tebow as the quarterback in the other. Peyton also is an elite underdog, including the postseason. He's 61-42-2 against the spread, 59.2%, covering by 2.5 points per game. When catching over a field goal, one of the best of all time, 66% against the spread. Sample size of 50 games, covering by about a field goal per game. And like you mentioned Stidham. So if you go back to since 2022, so he has 4 starts, 2 with the Broncos, 2 with the Raiders. If you remove garbage time and you look at all quarterbacks with a minimum of 100 snaps, he is 19th in success rate out of 82 quarterbacks. He's basically tied with Jalen Hurts. Adjusted EPA per play, 33rd, basically Baker Mayfield. 41st in EPA plus completion percentage over expectation, basically Mitch Trubisky over that. So like Mitch Trubisky feels like a fair uh and here's the thing. In those 4 games, he started 2 with the 2023 Broncos. They were 26th in DVOA offensively, 31st in pressure rate allowed. Bad offense, bad offensive line. 2022 Raiders, 24th DVOA on offense, 25th in pressure rate allowed. Well, now he has an elite play caller. He's been in the system for years, and he has arguably the best offensive line in the NFL. That's massive for a backup. You also have like the Ewing theory in effect here, right? Backup quarterback, AFC championship get home. You're going to get everyone else like just out of body stepping up. It's narrative-y, but we've seen it play out in the past before. Also, now all the pressure shifts to the Pats, right? Like this young team with a young quarterback, they're playing Jared Stidham. Like you can't let this opportunity go by. So the Broncos can play free here. Additionally, the element of surprise, I think, works in the Broncos' favor. Like what are they going to do with Stidham? What are the packages that they're going to use? Like I think this is to their advantage. Now, McDaniels does have a lot of familiarity with Stidham, right? They drafted him. That he went with McDaniels to the Raiders. So he knows his tendencies. Maybe that plays a factor. But there's a reason that this Stidham was the first free agent signing for Peyton when he got to Denver. I think that he likes him. And I trust Peyton to get creative here. And I agree with you. I think that he's going to have to throw the ball and he's going to have to do it fairly efficiently because they're not going to run on the Patriots. I mean, you look at the Patriots, their run D was so elite early in the year. And then it fell off because Milton Williams got hurt, their linebackers got hurt, Tonga was hurt. And then but if you just look at their splits when they're healthy, their run defense is dominant. So that Stidham's not going to
Yeah.
have a run game to rely on. But his offensive line, Peyton's also a really good schemer against the blitz. Their offensive line is good against like stunts, which the Patriots have been doing. The Patriots, like over the last 4 games, they're blitzing at like a Flores rate, like 43, 45, 44. And that's how they're getting pressure because they can't really generate pressure without blitzing. And that now they're going up against a much better offensive. I mean, their last 4 weeks, they went up against what the Jets, Dolphins, Chargers, and Texans offensive lines, all with injuries. And now you're going up against one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. So I think there will be opportunities for Stidham to move the ball. And then once they do move the ball into the red zone, you're going up against one of the worst red zone defenses in the NFL. Now, fortunately for the Pats, they play the Chargers and the Texans offenses, who are the 2 worst red zone offenses. Denver, I think, will scheme up some better stuff here in the red zone. I mean, before last week, the Pats were giving up touchdowns on 95% of goal-to-go drives on the season. 95%. So, and you mentioned it, like the pressure, I think, is going to be huge here on the road. Also, you got to remember the noise, false starts, just communication, all of that. That's what plays into home field here in a hostile environment. But one of Drake May's biggest weaknesses was his pressure to sack ratio, right? He was 28th in the regular season at 20%. Well, that's gone up to 45%. That left side of the offensive line, Benito and company, I think, are going to get a lot of pressure. This is a Denver defense that's top 3 in adjusted pressure rate, 4th in pressure rate without blitzing. So, yeah, I like the Broncos here also. You mentioned, and look, the Patriots, you mentioned Denver not getting turnovers. They've been unlucky. They're one of the 5, they were, I think, 29th in EPA due to turnovers. The Pats have been very lucky. I mean, look no further than, I mean, the Pats, not only did the Pats have the easiest schedule in the NFL and face nothing but backups, 4th downs, they were 72% during the regular season. Their opponents, 30. They fumbled it 20 times, recovered 12. They recovered 10 of their opponents' 14 fumbles. So extreme fumble luck. That's continued in the postseason. So far in the postseason, they're 2 of 3 on fourth downs. Their opponents 2 of 5. Fumbles, they fumbled it 6 times, only lost 3. Their opponents fumbled it 3 times, only lost 2. Denver's the complete opposite. Like 50% on fourth down for them, 50% for their opponents. They recovered the second fewest fumbles in the league. So you saw finally some turnovers break their way last week. Don't be surprised if some fourth downs and some turnovers break their way again this week. So yeah, I like the Broncos here.